All right, hello and welcome back to another video, our tactical talk with Dharnish, and obviously the first one that we're doing since we have the news of Erik ten Hag being relieved as manager. We've had a Ruud van Nistelrooy game. We're not going to really break that down today, um, but we definitely want to talk about what everybody wants to talk about, which is Ruben Amorim. How does he play? How does he fit? What does he do? Where does he go? What are we going to look like under Ruben Amorim? And it's safe to say that this will be a very, very different appointment to what we've made in the past at United for so many reasons. But first, it's kind of where we were at when we discussed this last time about Ten Hag. We were sitting here thinking, we could see things that we could do right, things that we could improve. We talked about Brentford, we talked about Preston, we talked about all that. And then Fenerbahce happened. The selection of Mazraoui in the 10, some very odd choices. And you got the idea that perhaps Ten Hag has kind of lost his place here and is no longer sure what he is doing. What do you think about that?
I mean, the king is dead, right? Um, he's gone, and I forgot, by the way, what it's like when a Man United manager leaves, because this week has been nuts.
Yes.
The only thing I've been doing for the past 3 days, Tuesday I had to be somewhere. Literally, Amorim, Ten Hag, Amorim, Ten Hag. Why somebody left? Why somebody's going to come in? I forgot the absolute whirlwind of explosion when a Man United manager leaves. It's like I don't know. It feels like a WrestleMania or something. Like it's like it's coming, and you forget the grandeur of when a manager leaves.
Yep.
They moved really quickly, by the way, for Amorim. It was startlingly quickly. They didn't move very quickly to get rid of Ten Hag, and they moved really quickly to get Amorim in, which we were talking before. I think it's interesting that in the summer there was no mention of Ten Hag Amorim. It was always De Zerbi or
Yeah.
Tuchel
Mm-hmm.
Tuchel to De Zerbi.
Yep.
Bit of Thomas Frank, Gareth Southgate was in there, supposedly, but it's been very quick and sudden. The Mazraoui 10 thing, I was one of the rare people who was like, I could actually see Mazraoui in the 10 there. It was more our overall play towards the end for Ten Hag that concerned me, which is this guy is clearly his back's against the wall. All he's playing now is he's managing for his job each time, so it's survival ball. It's like defensive football, and to be a United manager, to be a United coach, you need to either have charisma, you need to either get the club, or you need to be brave in your approach. You can be all three things. Um, it felt like he changed too much in games. It felt like he changed the tactical approach too much according to the game, according to the situation, according to how much scrutiny was on him, according to everything. That worked in the first season, but he ended up changing things too much. And in doing so, there wasn't really a style of play that he honed
Right.
in that period, because it's a very complex job, Man United. There's a fear of failure the whole time, and if you cave into that fear of failure, it's going to chew you up and spit you out, and that's kind of exactly what happened with Ten Hag. It's it's easy for us to sit here and say, oh, he needed to be more bold and he needed to be more braver, but that kind of is what you need to be as a United manager. If you're not that in games, why don't you go and be that in the media then, at the very least? And
Yep.
I don't think he was. The other thing as well is he had 3 seasons, right? If with all the injuries last year, if he had showed us, look, we're still injured, I don't care. I'm still going to play a certain way. I'm still going to be bold. And he showed us there were games against Aston Villa at home where we turned it over and everyone was like, this is wonderful. We saw Wan-Bissaka press the life out of Morgan Rogers on the centre circle, and we pressed the life out of Chelsea at home. It's like, so you can do it. The players are listening to you. It's in front of you.
Yep.
If you showed us more of that last season, we would have all been like, fair enough, we've got injuries, but you're showing us somewhere where we can go, rather than
Yep.
rather than, he didn't even really go down fighting. He went down playing essentially Allardyce football and saying, I'm just kind of treading water here. So it's there's a lot of things to consider. It's my concern more is this just an impossible job for managers? And it might be, genuinely, it might be. It feels like a poison chalice. It feels like the England job before Gareth Southgate took over, where it's everybody will tell you how they will do it, and everybody wants a crack at it before they actually get into it, and it's just a job with too much scrutiny.
Yeah, and it's certainly a really good point, in terms of where it went wrong for Ten Hag. Now, interestingly, to cover a few points how we got to this point of Ruben Amorim being the hire is, when Sir Jim was interviewed very early on about how you build this football club. And this is one of the reasons I did a video the other day, kind of just going manager by manager and looking at these points, not breaking down their tactics or anything, but looking at these points of like, what are the key things to make a successful team, right? And a couple of them are, some of the big things that we've always lacked at United was a defined style of play that is a bit dogmatic, right? That comes from the club down, like, this is what we're going to do. And if you look at recent success in the Premier League, they're very dogmatic managers. Gone are the days of, free flowing game to game tactical, approaches. Obviously Pep Guardiola, we know, is I'm not saying he doesn't adjust and he doesn't have problem solving. That's what makes him such a good manager. But we know his principles are really, really sharp. And how City is going to play every single game, no matter what the opponent, no matter what happens, they're going to play the same game. How Arsenal are going to play. Under Klopp, you saw that with Liverpool. You knew exactly what they're going to do game to game to game to game. You see right now with Tottenham, that's what Postecoglou is trying to do. And I think they just knocked City out of the cup yesterday. I think they're doing well at it. Whether they go all the way, who knows? It's Tottenham, right? They probably won't. But he's trying to do the same thing, right? To lay these principles down that Tottenham will play the game they want to play no matter what happens. And it's a better route to success than it's definitely the way football is moving, right? If you look at other leagues, it's been that way for a long time. In the Bundesliga, in Italy, in these places, what they're going to play. I mean, look at Barcelona; they've been playing the same type of football for 20 years now, and it's ingrained in them through the academy on up how you want to play football. We've never really had that at United. We've talked about this before. And this is why I think it has been impossible, and why this is the first time we see something different, right? Because when we look at it overall, in general, there's no common thread between anybody in there, and that doesn't give us very much to work with. So it goes from one to the next, flipping back and forth, and everything. And that's how it's been for some time. And so not only do you not get a straight tactical approach, but you also don't get the squad built to what you want to do, right? So I think, one of my biggest concerns, I'm not tooting my own horn on this, but one of my biggest concerns when we were bringing Ten Hag in is, one time I said on Twitter, it's going to take 10 years to build an Ajax team, a Ten Hag team here, because we have nobody who fits it at all. We had just gone from Jose to Oli to totally different, right? We had nothing that fit it. We had like maybe one or two players. And so, he tried to bring in a lot of his own players to solve this. Unfortunately, they just weren't good enough, right? They weren't good enough. The transition between the leagues wasn't good enough. And we've never done that. And that has made it fairly impossible. And I think that the hope is that with an approach to in this new way of building things, we're going to stick with something for 3, 4, 5 years and really build a way to play that we want to go forward. And I just want to touch on one more point before we go into the next thing here that you can respond to, which is when you're talking about, the managers in summer, when you look at the people that they wanted, as for my understanding, and I stand by this quite strongly, Ruben Amorim wasn't necessarily the top of the list. He wasn't hired in summer. They had concerns over him. They passed over him at that time, even though they consider him. Before summer, they looked at two managers that they thought would be the best possible, which were Xabi Alonso and Julian Nagelsmann. Both of them, in a funny way, and if you compare this to some of Dan Ashworth's other hires, are pretty similar in certain approaches, and they're also pretty similar to Ruben Amorim in certain approaches. But those would have been the top choices that were not available. And so I think there's been a clear effort, and one of the things with Thomas Tuchel as well, right, is he's a manager who can do what you want him to do. You know, whatever you build the squad to do, he's going to help you get the most out of it. He's interesting in that respect. He's a pragmatic manager, but not so much on a game-to-game basis as he is. He'll look at the squad and say, okay, that's how we want to play, and then he'll do that. And he's very good at coaching a team that way. But look at him. He's going and coaching a three-at-the-back English system that was built by Ashworth and Gareth Southgate right now. So there's a whole lot of continuity between the people that they were looking at. Even Kieran McKenna, who they considered, also plays a similar three-at-the-back system with Ipswich that not exclusively, but he plays a lot. There's a lot of similarities. And so I think they really, for the first time probably ever at United, right? Because under Sir Alex, it was just Sir Alex. Nobody else was making these calls. For the first time ever at United, I think they've said, okay, we're going to do the exact opposite of this chop, change, game to game, figure it out type of play. We're going to decide this is what we want United to be. And then we'll go get a manager. And Amorim is a good fit for it, even if he wasn't the perfect manager or the top choice, which wasn't attainable. He's a very good, excellent manager that they think has excellent traits to build and help them put this in place in the club and build and grow with it. And I think that's the big positive of this whole thing.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about the back three. Let's get into some Amorim film. I spent full duration of last night watching as much Sporting Lisbon as I could.
Did you?
And it's a few things like straight away jump out, and it's very like exhaustively watching their goals. They do the same pattern and the same automatism a lot. Like a lot. Like I was a little bit annoyed because I was like, dude, I've been watching this for 2 hours. I could have just done it for 1 hour and kept it there, because honestly, what they do is very, very like it's the automatisms are like bang, 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 bang. They score a lot of the same goals. I don't know if you want to get
let me put it up on the screen here. But you're absolutely right, and I'm really one of the things I'm happy about with hiring Amorim is I've watched him for a long time, just like because I just for whatever reason there's a lot of managers I've not watched. You ask me about Xabi Alonso, I can only tell you he's similar. I haven't actually watched him at Let's. But Ruben Amorim, I have watched a whole lot, and so I'm happy that I'll actually be somewhat knowledgeable to help in this. But here you go. Here's your first image.
You're always knowledgeable.
I know, but I really
regardless of what the comments say about both.
More than like most people, I've watched so much sporting football. It was, and I'm glad there's actually a point to it because I didn't think there was any. So anyway, go ahead.
There you go. It was in preparation for this video. So this is not the first image is not it's not really going to explain much of the pattern. That the next the fourth, the fifth is going to explain the rest of it, and that's the key part of this. But this will sort of go somewhere to explaining. So a lot of people call this a 3-4-3. I don't really mind about. I don't really care about formations. It's a 5-2-3. It's a 5-4-1. I don't really care. It's more about what the formation does and where it leads you.
Yep.
So it is a 3-4-3 from the looks of this image. The key points about this system are the three at the back, the two midfielders, so Hojumland and Bragança, and then the fullbacks are quintessential, very crucial, very important. They make the attack tick. They almost all the goals that I saw from Sporting were because of the movements from the fullbacks, whether it was Ignacio and Katomo. And then the wide forwards, they're not really wide forwards. They're inside forwards to me.
Especially I think this year they've gone even more narrow from what I can tell.
Like Trincao and Conchalves. Sometimes there's Trincao and Araujo, It's
Hmm.
very much they're in the half spaces. Now for this
Yes.
game, Palinia was in instead of Gaio, but he's a monster to he was a monster for Amorim and Sporting. But
Yeah,
the
and
fullback,
just one note on that, on the fullback. Just I'm sorry, no, don't mean to cut
no,
you
go
off.
ahead.
In a lot of games, depending on the matchup, I think one of the adjustments you'll see here, like here he has Gonzalo Inacio at fullback, who's more defensive because he's usually a center back for him. But there are many games he uses a winger out there, Nuno Santos, and Quenda on the other side. So it kind of depends on the matchup, more attacking or more defensive based on the personnel being used at fullback. But because this is a big game against Porto, right? This picture
Yeah,
you picked, yeah. So go
no, I
ahead.
think
Sorry about that.
no,
Yep.
I think that's a good point because he did change his fullbacks quite a bit in the film that I saw. If you want to just go to like the next images and then we can kind of get into it.
Yep.
So what the Amorim system essentially does and what it's key to doing. The fullback goes extremely wide and extremely high. Now, as
Yep.
this happens, one of the inside forwards, I think in this sense, it was either Trincao or Araujo, he will make a run down the wing. So if you want to just go to the next one, then we'll see. Yeah, there we go.
And then I can go to this one, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
There we go.
perfect. Okay, there we go. This is something that if it's working and if Amorim does it with Man United, you will see a lot of. So as it's played over to the left fullback, what this does is it draws out the opposing fullback, so you can see the guy in yellow close in there. Just ahead of him, Araujo makes a run down the wing as well. You can see the space this opens up between both centre backs for I think it's
Mm-hmm.
Esther. So what Sporting are essentially trying to do, and what they do a lot of, is they score a lot of goals exhaustively through cutbacks and crosses.
Wouldn't that be nice? The
What
thing we're worst at in the last like 5 years, right?
scoring from cutbacks and crosses instead of
Instead of
conceding from
conceding all of them, yeah.
them. So it's basically each one of their automatisms or each one of their patterns is concerned with creating that space in between the centre backs or creating space in the half spaces by using a fullback and an inside forward very in close proximity. If you want to just go to the next image, and then that'll show the space that is being darted into. Yeah, there you go. So as Katomo has the ball here and Trincao comes over,
So
you
is
have
this
an
the same
inside
move as
forward.
kind of the other side, right? Like the same concept.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
The inside forward. So Trincao is one of the three forwards. The inside forward and the fullback combine, they'll drag two players close to them. If you go to the next one, you'll see what actually happens when I don't think they score from this. This is what happens when they score. Right, this one's perfect. So the fullback goes over to where Katamo is. A midfielder comes over to Trincao because he's a lot deeper.
Yep.
When Trincao and Katomo sort of interlink, this allows a midfielder in Morita to dart into that half space. They play
Yep.
that ball in behind, a cutback is made, and they score. They score because
I'll
the
go back
box
to
is
that.
being
Sorry.
flooded by. It's okay. It'll be on the next one if you want to go to the next one. The box is being flooded in the meantime by the
Oh yeah, here we
opposing
go.
fullback, Guy O'Kara is in a striker, and another midfielder flooding into the box. And
Yep.
they do this. I can't stress this enough. They do this every single time. Like each time,
Yes.
every game I saw, this is all I saw. It's either this or crossing into the box, and Guy O'Kara's will either elbow somebody with his shoulder, like
Yep.
just be a complete nuisance, and then thunder blast it in.
Yep.
They do this each time. Now they'll use differing variations of this. So if you want to just go to the next one. So this
It's
time,
kind of the same thing in a way, but go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
of course.
Yep.
So this
Yep.
time it's again it's Morita going through to that half space, but you can see what they're doing. There's two
Mm-hmm.
players always going over to where Katamo and Trincao are. And that's going to happen because if you're a wide fullback that's high, the opposing fullback is always going to come across to where you are. Because
Yep.
if he doesn't, Katamo can go down the wing and then cross it. Always,
Yep.
every single time. So it's all about creating that half space that normally opens up between a wide fullback and a centre back in the middle.
Right. And
The
just
other
one thing I wanted to just ask
yeah,
real quick or point out on this. So just to be clear, right? So this is your left inside forward right here in this instance. This is your striker.
I think that's
Or they
Santos.
might have they might have switched one of these, but yeah, this is a left forward, a striker. These are your two midfielders in this image right here.
Yeah,
Your two
yeah.
mids. This is Yeoman and Mitoto.
Oh,
Got
I
his
said
name right.
Hajunland wrong then. Okay, Human.
Yeah, Yeoman. I've had it corrected many times. It's like Yeoman is how
Human.
it's pronounced.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
and then this is your right wing back and Trincao and your right forward. So you can see like everybody kind of floods the box. And if for later, if you were to make a comparison to some of the players, you have like Yeoman would be something like how Ugarte is used for us, right? And in terms of a profile, because Ugarte has played for Ruben Amorim before, of course, as the deeper, more defensive one. And generally it tends to be one of them. Not saying the other one doesn't come in as well, because look at Yeoman comes into this space. And I was watching their cup game the other day. They did this exact move, like literally this
Mm,
exact move 2 days
yeah.
ago in our watch along. And Yeoman actually came right here, exactly where he is now, right here.
I
It
think
the
it's the same
this
move, and he ends up scoring.
Yeah, no, this is the game, right? This is from 2 days ago. Then, yeah, this is that
Yeah,
exact thing. Yes, and then he hits it in. It comes off of the defender, and Yeoman picks it up and scores it right here on this goal. So this move results in a goal, and it's actually the two midfielders getting involved. And I've noticed that one of the things a lot that everybody gets involved in the scoring because the movements use a lot of players to make this work, and you create a lot of overloads with so many of these late arrivals, so many like runners. You have one midfielder drag, then the other midfielder comes in, and they just lose track of him, and it happens all the time. But anyway, it's just interesting that this is their midfield and their forwards all up in there, and a fullback. Um, they put a lot of men forward when they commit to the attack.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
If you want to
Marita,
just go
that's the
back,
name. Yeah.
because I want to just talk more about the differing variations of doing this, because this is basically what they do each time. They just do it differently to create space. So if you want to just
Mhm.
click the X, and then I'll go down. Then we'll
Oh,
go down to one of the ones where
this one?
yeah. No, just keep going
This
down,
is
and
a
I'll tell you
little
when to stop.
different. A few.
It's a little bit different, but it's largely the same. I want to just okay. Here we go. This is fine.
This one?
Just the one above it.
This here.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay.
So again, you can see that it's the same space is highlighted, right? The same half space
Yeah,
is
correct.
highlighted.
It's different part of the pitch, but yeah, same space. Yep.
Look at where Trincao is, right? He's one of the
Mhm.
three wide forwards. So this is, I think, I think a team was trying to press Amorim here. So they pressed them very high up the pitch. Now again, you can use this to your advantage. Trincao comes very deep, and Chukwani is the marker, and he goes with him. But look at how far into his own half he stretches him. In the end, this leaves the
Yeah.
opposing midfield staggered. So there's a gap to play in Gaia Keres. So this is where, if you're a striker for a Ruben Amorim team, there are going to be times where you are definitely going to be contributing to the build-up, whether you're pinning a defense, or you are coming short for the ball. So Trincao then plays in Gaia Keres. There's two centre backs marking Gaia Keres. He uses his strength to play Gatomo in behind. Then you can see, if we go to the next image, once again, we come to the exact same conclusion. The ball is going to go to Katamo wide. He crosses it in, and then we again reach the same conclusion. So the same thing happens. It's just differing variations of it. The inside forward of either Trincao or Araujo, they are like they will have to drop deep a lot to be in close proximity with the two midfielders, or they're going to have to drop a lot to drag a defender with them in order to reach that space wide. So it's honestly, this is what they do each time, and this is all they've done. It's been drummed into them each time, each time. Um, there's various examples of it, and there's varying differentiations that they use, like through their rotations.
Right.
Um, we'll get onto it. We'll get onto it now. Actually, the other variation that they use, if you want to just go back, is when a striker in Gaio Keres goes wide, and a wide forward goes wide. So if you want to just go down, yeah, just keep going down, keep going down, keep going down. There we go.
This
That one there. That's exactly the one there. So the people can see. So this time it's Pedro Gonçalves as the wide forward, next to Gaio Keres as the striker.
so he
Again, there's a
comes all the way
space
out here.
created in the middle, and it's a fullback make an inverted run. So picture Katamo as Dallo or Mazraoui, picture Gaio Keres being Hoyland or Xerxes, and picture Gonçalves being, I don't know, Rashford or Garnacho or Namad Diallo.
Right.
This is a rotation. It's the wide forward and the striker are going wider. Both defenders, both the fullback and the centre back, are going out to them whilst they have it in build-up. And this time it's a fullback darting in to make the run. It's that same run into the half space. That space being created because two players of the opponent's team are having to go wide because that's where the ball is.
And you still have your occupation of the other players with these guys sitting here, which is why this guy can't just run over. You're making a gap right here as well.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that's an opposing fullback. Sorry,
Yep.
I think that's Santos on the other wing, and then
Yep.
a midfielder. So
Yep.
honestly, that
So
is
this can
probably
come right into here and then again cut back, and you have players available. Makes sense.
yeah. Look at how stretched the back five is.
Yeah.
The other thing is as well is it'll be quite advantageous for United's Amorim side to play back fives, because I feel like there are more spaces that can be reached in playing against a back five rather than a back four. Because if you play in a back four, normally they won't a fullback in a back four won't ordinarily go out to a player wide because they have to stick because there's less spaces in between them. But honestly, this probably covers what they do in possession a lot. Like that is primarily what they do in possession. The thing that I want to get onto is sort of the suitability with the United squad and what a United team might look like if Amorim is to play this way, because of course he could come over and then be like, it's a different squad, it's a different
Yeah.
profile. I'm not going to play a back three. I personally think that he might play a back three or at least try it for a couple of games, and then he will change and tweak according to what happens as the results pan out.
Right.
There is a plethora of wide players for Manchester United, and there's quite a few centre backs. So this means two things. Number one, there's probably going to be a centre back that steps up and gets a lot more first team minutes. So there's probably going to be, because Lenny Yoro is number one, he's injured. Number two, I don't know how quickly he's going to adapt to the Premier League. Number three, there's three at the back. So in my eyes, I would like to see Lenny Yoro, De Ligt, Martinez, Dallo, Musraoui. I think in the final image of the thread, I have what I think could happen, and then we'll get that up because it'll be easier for people to watch along. There we go. Right away, you got it. So again, there's a lot of forward slashes in here because I don't, whenever you put these up, people get really pissed off, and then they're like, no, that's not going to happen because we're going to sign because we're going to sign Neymar and he's going to play up front. But
Yep.
If we had to play a Ruben Amorim system, this is the first 11 that I would imagine. So Martinez, De Ligt, Lenny Yoro, and Mazraoui and Dallo as the fullbacks. Now,
you mean essentially basically at the moment, obviously we don't have, if Luke Shaw was healthy, he's pretty well a perfect left-sided wing back for this. He's even played in the back three system before.
He could also play as a centre back though, right?
Yes,
Because
correct.
Ten Hag
Yes,
played him as a centre back. But we need to contextualize this in the context of Manchester United right now.
Yeah,
and that is Euro and Maguire. I think are both injured, so that could genuinely mean that whichever centre back that United have, they automatically become very valuable. So whether it's Victor Lindelof or whether it's even Johnny Evans, we might see a lot more minutes of them. Again, with an asterisk of if Amorim plays the system that he did at Sporting
Yeah.
with Man United. Now,
Yeah, and look, there's gonna, like you said, there's gonna be a lot of different opinions on all of this, and we don't really rightly know, right? Which exactly he's gonna do in different things because, in his front three, there tends to be a lot of times two narrow players who kind of run together and sometimes even make a two, and you can have someone who's a little more like floating, and it changes a whole lot in there. But I also think the benefit of that is that there is variation possible. It could be because you look at it and you look at the way it's set up. Rasmus Højlund is really similar to Gyökeres, right? Xerxes is not at all.
no,
But but Xerxes could play in like a floating role, and then you move these other players into the half spaces. It's a narrow three, and it's also it tends to be very fluid. And I think what's more important about these players is that, one, I think they all do have to be fairly quick. I think that's an important aspect of it because there's a lot of movements between them in rotations and in confusing the front three and all of that. But there's a lot of different ways that it can look. I think the other day in the second half, it was Araujo and Gyökeres in that game. And they made a lot more of a two, while Trincao was often kind of drifting behind them in a way that Bruno or Ahmad might. Where and so there's really a lot of variations in this, and again, as we touched on in the beginning, depending on the matchup, if it's a bigger game, he wants to be more defensive, two fullbacks. If it's a smaller game and you want to be more attacking, I'm just making this suggestion, you could put Garnacho as a left wing back because his left wing backs sit up here all game, attacking against smaller sides, playing really aggressive in the wide areas and combining and using their pace and taking men on and things like that. You could put Wan-Bissaka, Amad Diallo out here, and then on the other side you use a defensive fullback, so that there's a lot of ways it can vary in this based on the matchup. And one of the things I hope that gets dispelled a little bit among United fans, just personally, because we have not really seen a back three at United like ever consistently,
yeah,
right? Fullbacks can be attackers. It can be as much or more attackers than anything else. It's not like you're on punishment role, shifts. If you suggest that like a forward goes into a fullback position in a system like this, it's not a punishment. It's not like, you're going to be moved to a defensive role and you're not good enough. These can be the most important and attacking positions on the pitch, where you need some real qualities physically and all of that. And so it's just interesting. I'm very curious how that goes, but
I am
there's a lot
too.
of variations.
I am too, because as you saw in the in possession stuff earlier, fullbacks are the ones in dangerous spaces. They're the ones cutting the
Yep.
ball back. They're the ones making the runs. At other points as well, when they make the runs inside the half space, they're the ones that, like, if they cut inside, they shoot sometimes a lot
Yes.
from the edge of the penalty area. I'm just wondering whether, number one, if we ever see a Garnacho at fullback, if we see Diallo at fullback, I think Diallo would be fine with it. He'd be cool with it. Would they
Yeah.
be happy to play that role? And because there's a lot of the midfield kind of, to me, kind of picks itself because there isn't that many of them.
Yeah.
That's what Ericsson, Mainu, Casemiro, and Ugarte. Two of those players are quite old. One is a new signing. One is like a nailed-on starter. There is a lot of games, so they're all of them are going to see minutes. The only
Yep.
thing I would say with that is, will we see Fernandez deeper? Because I don't like seeing Fernandez deeper, but in these roles, in the role of the midfield too, he will be more box to box. He
Yeah.
will be playing with the fullback next to him and then making late runs into the box. I'm sure I
Right.
want him making late runs into the box. So when
Yep.
if he is to do that, that's why I put him in that position as like a forward slash. What you can do is you can then have Garnacho and Diallo as your inside forwards, and then have Højlund / Xerxes / Rashford in there, because
Yeah.
I keep
Exactly.
thinking about who scored the most goals for United under Ten Hag? I go, oh, Rashford. I look
Yeah.
at that season and I got his career best. A lot of the games he played was centrally, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, and I
Closer
was
to
watching.
goal, and we can see him
Yeah,
struggling right now being on these like deep right wing shifts. He's not getting anywhere near the goal.
physically as well. He's no slouch. Like he can use his body to
Yes.
drag defenders in the same way Gaio Keres does.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some interesting aspects with this. The only thing I would say is I'm a little bit concerned about the amount of fullbacks because
Yeah. Because of our health of our fullbacks.
but yeah, I mean, what Mazraoui and Dallo are your nailed on ones. Mazraoui didn't even play in the last
Yep.
game because I think they're shielding him from injury. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised to see Alessandro Martinez at fullback, which again that means okay, so that means Lindelof slash Evans slash Maguire slash whoever is the fit centre back is going to play in that three. Um, so it's basically a question of well, we'll see how many fullbacks we have. We'll see is he going to sign anybody in January? Is there money available? Um, it's not it's not a squad that like I look at automatically and I go, if he plays that system, I'm going to know who plays where.
Mm.
The other thing I would say, and I think this is crucial, Sporting Lisbon, he used so many youth players, so many
Yes.
youth players. He brought them through.
Yes.
Um, so I'm looking at Carrington and I'm going, there's going to be a lot of players, Harry Amos,
Mm-hmm.
that come through. I think Amos was tipped by Ten Hag and Luke Shaw as playing more minutes. I wouldn't be surprised to see academy prospects played just so he can get what he wants.
Yeah, there's a guy. There's one there's one of the young youth players right now that I know has been mentioned by a few that would be almost quite perfect. Mentoto, is it? I might be pronouncing it wrong. That'd be really good in one of these wide fullback roles as well. But yeah, there's a lot of options, and when I look at it, yeah, it is tricky. There's question marks, right? There's certainly
There
question marks
is.
over what we're going to play. But I think the other factor in it is that you can play within the system. It's the system itself under Amorim is pretty rigid. Like you said, they do the same thing over and over and over and over again. And he does not change formation, and he does not do that. But he does move his players around a lot. Like we saw in going through the images, right? In some of the images you had, Inacio at left back, at left wing back, who is a center back. And I've seen Inacio also play as a central center back. And he plays as a left center back. So he can play across these three positions. In other games, you had Nuno Santos, who's very much a winger at left wing back. You have Quendes, who's very much a winger at right wing back. And so there's a lot of balance in it depending on the matchups that you look at it and say, yeah, we could do a lot. We could change things um, within it, and that makes it a little bit easier, I think, in some sense, for him to work around injuries. I think it's one of the ways that he's seen a lot of success is because it's sort of weird. We've had a system where we've changed a lot, but has also been super player reliant. I would say his system is not that player reliant, because it changes in the pick of the players for these positions all the time. But um, but you still need someone for all of these. And I think going into the window, I would say definitely my biggest concern is the fullback. But the thing
Yeah,
is that that's true for whoever was managing United right now. The fullback's your biggest problem. It has been for 2 years. If Luke Shaw's never going to come back and be healthy, somehow we have to get a left back because otherwise we only have one, no matter what. But it's interesting, and if we keep making the club younger in our purchases, the team younger in our purchases, then I think it's going to allow us to have more flexibility in there too. We've really never seen this before, but I mean, Pep, I would give him credit in that he was such a master about, you know, he's so strict, but he also has that thing where he has players who play different roles all the time and will switch out between different roles, all the time. And he's made the adjustments of center backs to fullbacks and fullbacks to center backs and wingers to midfielders and doing these types of things while maintaining the same system. And so I think it gives you a little bit of more maybe leeway with your squad when you're capable of doing that. But I think that first team is going to be incredibly interesting to see, because we'll
Mm,
learn a lot about that from that first
absolutely.
team to say, oh, that's how he views these players. Like, that's how he views those players in their best position. That's what he thinks of them, because that's what he's going to do in his first game, right? He's going to pick who he thinks is the best player for each position in his system, and you'll know right off the bat who it is from there. So it's going to be very interesting.
And then I guess he can take it from there according to sort of what unfolds, and then we'll see, okay, that
Correct.
clearly didn't work. I'm going to need to change that. Um, I kind of wish we were getting it on Sunday, but I think we're
I
gonna
know.
have to. I think we're gonna have to wait till the 24th.
I
Ipswich
know,
away.
because of the break. Yes. Yeah.
Ipswich away. So I think we've got Rude interim for 3 games, but
Yep.
that pretty much covers his in possession tactics and what I feel is the things that we need to look out for in the squad and how and the suitability of it.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, and I guess the benefit of this is that he'll get those 2 weeks. It's an international break. He'll get 2 weeks to settle in. I think we have more of a chance of seeing his football. Not the best, but one of the things I do think will surprise people, because he did this when he arrived at Sporting midseason. They played his way pretty fast, like really fast, and he started seeing results with it really fast. I think it's kind of a weird thing, and I don't want to go on and on about past managers and all of that, but I think people have been maybe a little bit fooled into thinking it takes too long to implement and play a certain way, that it takes years to learn a tactic or to get something in place. There's always the perfection of it, but a lot of that comes down to just then assessing your players in there and seeing what they can execute, what they can't, who needs to be upgraded, who can't actually do it, and then fixing those issues. But they played his way really quickly, and in his first full season, which was only 3 months during the time when he first arrived, his first full season, they won the league for the first time in 19 years, and went essentially invincible. They lost in the 33rd game when they'd already won the league, and they were playing basically a youth side. But they won the league. They had clinched the league before losing a game, and it did not take long for them to get it. And not that there aren't rigid things with this, but one of the things I think helps, and give me your thoughts on this. Let's bring it back to just this kind of discussion. Is that I think with Ten Hag, a lot of players had to be, because it wasn't so dogmatic. There was a lot of like thinking on your feet, if you
Mm.
know what I mean. A lot of the creativity, a lot of things came from, I'm not calling it individual brilliance, because there's a lot of managers who are like this, where players have to, it's not like they have a specific, a very clear role. Sometimes it can be, there's a lot of variation on the pitch making decisions. In Amorim's system, like you said, with those like patterns, right? I'm not saying they don't have to do things, but in some ways it's easier to understand for players, because it's really clearly defined. You do if you're in this role, you do exactly this over and over and over and over and over again. And I think that is one of the reasons that he was able to get through a little bit quicker. And it's a difference between managers and in that respect, and how they coach things and see it. Like at Madrid, there's also a lot of freedom. So I'm not saying it can't work. There's a lot of freedom at Madrid, positionally, in what you're supposed to do. Um, so there's different ways of looking at it, and I think like at Madrid, that's why they have these hyper, like really intelligent players, right? These generals on the pitch who are making big decisions all the time. Your Kroos, Modric type players, they have to be super intelligent to make it at Madrid and to perform to that level. And if they can, then it allows them to solve problems that the system isn't solving. If they run into issues, they can solve it themselves. And so there's just different approaches, but in this, really defined roles for players, which I don't think we've had recently. It's just a different approach.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I think as well, just to sort of add on to the point that you made, the tactical instructions are another thing that they. I think Andy Mitten said it. multiple times on like Talk of the Devils. He said he knows what he wants, and he knows what the players, and he knows what he wants the players to do. There's just miscommunication in between that. He's saying to the
Right.
players, "You should do this when this happens," and the players are going, "Okay," and then they didn't understand it.
Right.
It's about being
That's
clear.
communication as well,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Yeah.
about being clear with your tactical instructions. And I guess we'll see that depending on how quickly they all pick up whatever system it is that he
Yep.
wants to play. I'm intrigued to see
Sure.
what he does when, because he's going to get found out, just like anybody does get found out in the Premier League. I'm intrigued to see what he does from that, because Ten Hag ended up changing that, and then he continued changing. He ended up changing too much.
Yeah.
So I think it's a fine balance. You need to drum your style in, and then you need to be tactically flexible as well. Because he's not without the ball. He's pretty flexible. He
Yep.
does press. We didn't cover that
Yes.
much of out of possession, just because I don't want the podcast to be too long. But
Yeah.
they do press out of possession. But the biggest difference is his striker Guy Keres will drop back in instead of pressing the
Instead of
goalkeeper.
which we talked about last time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so which is good, because that means there won't be a +1 in midfield or a defense, and if a fullback gets it, the fullback pushes up. But
Yep.
there's variations that I've seen of his out of possession stuff as well. So
Yep.
fine balance.
And I
You need
think
the
that's
style, and you need to be able to adapt tactically, like all the best managers in the Premier League do.
for sure, for sure. And I think what's good is he's shown the stubbornness to stick with something and to get it in place that we haven't seen. Because bring the bar up and then be more flexible to problem solve after that. Like there's been a lot of critiques of one of the downsides of him. One of the concerns that there was his conceding a lot of transitions in certain spaces, things like that in the past. And interestingly, this year he has adapted to that, moving the forwards a bit more narrow. They've actually dropped their pressing intensity a little, almost like what
Mm.
we've talked about with not going to the keeper. They've actually dropped their pressing intensity a little bit to where they're kind of middle of the road in terms of pressing intensity. They set a lot of traps. They do a lot of different things, but they're kind of they did a big focus, as far as I could tell, in how they played, in don't let things come down the middle. Don't concede anything through the middle of the pitch, which is almost the opposite of the donut that we've been using for the last year and a half at United. So that's good. But no, it is interesting. And I think, again, the positive of the timing of the appointment is we're 14th. It's mid-season. He'll have many, many good excuses to figure it out, right? Valid excuses. No preseason, no transfer window for him. Coming in mid-season, we're in 14th. There's already, it's not his team. So he will get almost a free pass this year, which is the really nice part. I think he's honestly gets a free hit this season in most people's eyes, because most people will say, what do you expect? And that will give him time without the pressure of winning every game, right? Like,
Yeah,
obviously we can't get relegated. We're not going to get relegated. You could see where our performances against,
I
like
hope
yesterday
no.
against Leicester, like just a little bit of freedom, a little bit of happiness, they'll win some games. They'll win enough games to do well. I'm not saying we won't win things. I'm not saying we can't win things. I'm not saying we can't perform well. I'm just saying that I don't think the pressure is going to be on in the way that obviously it was on Ten Hag towards the end, because he's coming into this situation and he's going to get the time to solve it. And then the nice part is we're going to get a good 6-7 months before the summer window to really have him evaluate his team, know who can play the roles that he has set out for them, who can't, and where they're really going to need to make changes in summer. So in some ways it might be better than if we'd appointed him next summer. And I'm not saying in some ways it's great that he's coming earlier, but in a lot of ways in the long term, I could see this working out even better, that he gets kind of this free hit period, because you come in summer and you have the whole window, and then you've never gotten to see your team play really in real games. You start struggling in that first season, the pressure's on. We saw that with Ten Hag, 2 games. He came in summer, he got these transfers. You had your preseason, got blown away in 2 games, and then
Yeah,
everything changed. We won't have that, because he doesn't have a window, he doesn't have anything. He could get blown away in 2 games, and it makes really no difference The schedule is also a little bit easier. I mean, Ipswich and a few pretty light games to start, which is
Some
going to
good
help.
games, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's almost the perfect scenario for him to come in, get the time, be able to evaluate the team, make the start to make a few adjustments based on what we've got, and I honestly think by the end of this season, before the end of the season, we'll be really seeing it in full flow, and I think it will all be able to sit there and say that's where we're weak. This is this because right now you ask me where do we need to upgrade? I don't really know. Besides the left back, I don't really know because I don't know how we play. Nobody can really answer how we play to say we need this type of midfielder, we need this type of forward, or we need this type of fullback or anything. 'Cause nobody knows how we play. But hopefully we will get that answer now during the season with him coming in.
Yeah, I think we'll know more as he takes charge, really.
Perfect. Good. Well, yeah, I think that covers everything we'd want to cover on this one. And obviously, maybe once we do the Nistelrooy's a couple more games, we'll come back next week and see were there really any changes
See
between
some
him and
rude
Ten
ball,
Hag.
yeah. See some
Yeah, see
rude ball.
if it's different. It wasn't that different yesterday, but we'll talk about it
Not
more
really. No, I
later.
think players were just, I don't know, more
Casemiro
freedom.
looked pretty happy, didn't he?
I think Casemiro in general looks a lot better than
Yeah,
last season, which is good.
he
Looks
does.
fit.
He does. So maybe next week we'll see if there's any actual adjustments. Once he's had a few more days to play, we're going to play a tougher game in Chelsea on Sunday, and then we'll come back a little bit later once once Amorim is in the door, and especially after his first game, it's going to be really interesting to break it down. So that's what we've got. Anything else you want to say or?
No, just it's been been a whirlwind week as so happens when a manager leaves. So it's I'm glad that it has eventually happened. I'm not sure if it could have been done in the summer, but anyway, it's done now.
Yeah, it is what it is. So, all right, well, good. Let's see. I know you've got a lot going on, spaces and videos and things to produce stuff for all of this as well. So make sure to check out Dharnish. I always tag him in the post. Dharnish Iqbal on X, Twitter, what have you. I think he's doing something a little later today, very shortly as well. I'll retweet the thread and I'll post it below your whole thread that breaks it all down. I'll post it below the video as well. When this goes out. And thank you all again for watching, for your comments, nice or mean, for following, and yeah, we'll see you in the next video. Okay,
Thanks, guys.
see ya.